Hey and welcome, I'm Hammeh, and in this video we're taking a look and analysis of Overwatch's latest short, Rise and Shine, in which after going into cryostasis with her team, May awakens to find all is not well at Ecopoint Antarctica. Here's my story and lore analysis of the entire short and reactions and first thoughts. It contains spoilers of course, so look away now if you need to watch it first on the Overwatch YouTube channel, then come back to this video to share your thoughts in the comments and take a look at details you may have missed. Firstly, I'll summarise the story of the short quickly before we move on to the lore and detail analysis. In the middle of an ice storm, a team of Overwatch scientists at Ecopoint Antarctica has missed their resupply window, and given that supplies are running low, May and her team decide under Captain Opara to go into cryostasis. Fast forward in time, and with one battery left flashing in the battery bank, an incoming message attempts to initialise and reactivate the cryo tanks. May's only opens. Saying how is it this cold in Mandarin, she gets the kettle on for her team before seeing that 9 years of scientific data have accumulated and the comms are down. Getting a news update and understanding that the world has changed since they've been in cryo, including Overwatch being disbanded, May rushes back to the tanks to discover that her colleagues are gone. The tanks have malfunctioned and she's all alone. Vowing to get the team's work to the world and seeing that the base's equipment is broken, May wonders if she can do it alone, before finding the signal that attempted to revive the tanks is on the Overwatch emergency frequency, and someone might know that they're still there. Putting an A-team-like plan and montage into action, May puts together a prototype endothermic blaster from a hairdryer, whipped cream spray can and a water tank, but runs out of power for the base just at the crucial moment. At this point, Snowball, who's been awake as May's trusty drone since she awakened from cryostasis, decides to sacrifice itself, giving its last charge in order to power the base to give May the power that she needs. After a dangerous climb of the radar tower, May succeeds in picking up Winston's message, and surrounded by the wonder of an aurora or perhaps the anomaly that we've seen on the scanners at Ecopoint Antarctica, she vows to support him and complete her colleagues' work. Toasting their memory with a final hot drink by their cryopods, May then sets out into the unknown, a fully charged Snowball now by her side. Okay, here's my lore analysis, as well as some details you may have missed and other thoughts and reactions on this animated short. The first thing I found pretty cool was taking a look at a different facet of Overwatch life, obviously in the scientific division. This team looks pretty close from their team photograph that we see May reminiscing over. There's no real way of knowing who's who in the photograph, although we do have 6 names as well as May's for the people in this picture. May does mention Captain Opara at the beginning. He sounds like the commander of the mission, as he's the person who decides that they go into hibernation, and he's a cryogenic expert, judging by the front of his pod. He's from Numbani, if the flag on his pod is also anything to go by, and if we can't identify him precisely, then maybe we can identify at least whose mugs are whose. Tea and making hot drinks from the beginning of the short seems to be a team ritual of sorts. May gets handed a mug before she goes into cryostasis, and the first thing she does when she gets out is get ready to make a drink for the rest of the team. We can have a shot at identifying the team's mugs for fun, which I'll do a bit later. We also get a bit more insight into May's personality. She's very close to her colleagues and friends, and is naturally devastated when she finds out that they're gone. Now, at the beginning of the short, in spite of the rather bad situation the team is in, May is still very excited and also very cheery. One thing does confuse me a bit at that point. The man who tells May to get into cryo sounds a bit British in terms of the accent, but there's no Brit on the team nationality-wise. There are 2 Americans, 1 person from Numbani, 1 person from Spain, 1 person from Sweden, and May from China. So who knows where that accent comes from. Even after she finds out that her team has gone, May still has time for a few cold related puns, saying "we're not on ice yet" to Snowball and "cool" when she gets her blaster working. Maybe the puns will never end. I see what the Overwatch team did here. Dad puns aside, May is initially a little bit concerned by the challenge, but she's pepped up when she manages to get Winston's message and by the memory and wanting to do justice by the memory of her friends. And she's very caring. I like the gesture of making the team a final hot drink before she set out into the Antarctic. Now, just for fun, quickly before we move on, about those mugs. I spent way too much time on this, but if we take the order of the team's pods from the level and then take this image of May and try and put the mugs next to them, we come up with this. As for the mugs, there's a dog mug, a standard Overwatch mug, Meg's mug, which is actually a BlizzCon 2014 Murloc mug, I believe. This used to be on sale. A squid mug, like the in-game logo, you can get as a player icon. A Kofi Aromo mug, that's the coffee shop chain you see in Numbani. I think they might have stands in the Oasis spawns as well. And a mystery mug that we only see here in this one shot in passing. If you have any idea what that is, do let me know. The next thing that was interesting was getting a sense of May's and the Ecopoint team's mission and its importance, as well as what's happened during the time that May has been in cryostasis. Now, when May awakes, we actually see her in a Summer Games jumper. She had a Summer Games spray in Uprising in this exact jumper, with her getting ready and sorting out her hair. Now, this isn't the first time that sprays have foreshadowed things about story and lore drops, so it's nice to see this connection here. We were being hinted about this short back when Uprising released. As for the importance of the mission, the 9 years worth of data May says could potentially save millions of lives. Now, we know that she's a peerless climatologist, and they were partially studying climate change as well as an anomaly close to the base. So whatever data May has may well be very, very valuable in helping to prevent other such weather patterns around the world. Now, what's been happening while May has been under? Well, we do get told by Snowball that they've been under for 9 years, so this does give us a little bit more information for some timelining. Long story short, if you've seen my Lore Bites timeline video I released quite some time ago, and I will be doing some updated timelining soon, it's 6 years or so ago since the Swiss HQ exploded, and it's roughly around that time that Overwatch was then disbanded. So if May's been under 9 years, then 3 years before that, 3 years before the Swiss HQ went boom, May and her team went into cryostasis. As for timelining and placing this short, well, the message that May receives is the "Are You With Us" trailer, which we presume is Winston's recall message that he sent in Recall, the animated short. So this should be placed in the present day, as it were, give or take some time passing since the launch of Overwatch, and how much time has passed since then and now in the timeline of the actual world. As a quick summary, Recall was quite some time ago for us. It's been over a year since Overwatch launched, but I don't think a full year perhaps has passed in the timeline of Overwatch's world to correspond with real life, if that makes sense. Okay, so what has happened in the world since May was away? Well, there was one screen where May was catching up on the news with various magazines and stills that gave us some really, really cool insight into what the world's media had been saying in the 9 years that May had been under. Now, the first screen here, we see two different things. The first is Insight magazine. We can see it questioning Overwatch, friends or foes, with the silhouettes of various of the heroes and characters that we know. And at the bottom there, I love this detail. Is this fighter the definitive weapon in aerial warfare? Now, this is the silhouette of the Slipstream fighter. It's the time teleporting fighter that Tracer was testing up until the point where she had her accident. So we could possibly date this magazine at around or before Tracer's accident, unless the Slipstream had somehow been continued and improved since then. But that magazine very much looks as though Overwatch was active at the time that it was asking those questions. If we then go over to the right of this image, we can then see what we now know as the format of the Atlas News TV news screen, and it says breaking news, global anti-omnic violence spreading as part of the copy down there. So showing May that anti-omnic sentiment has been rising since she has been in cryostasis. Next up, we get a couple of different images. One of them just says Overwatch fractured, and the next is US politics. In the top right, we have defense contracts, who's involved, and then a very, very big central image. Next to Can Drones Be Trusted, we see Blackwatch in the shadow of Overwatch, and a very, very suspicious looking picture of Gabriel Reyes. Now, clearly at this point, Reyes was publicly known as being associated with Blackwatch. He was in the public eye, and the existence of Blackwatch as part of Overwatch was known. So this is very, very intriguing. What was happening at this point for Reyes to be shown on the cover of a US politics magazine? Now, from Uprising, in Morrison's office with the various news on the background on the wall there, we know that there was a lot going on even around the time of Uprising that Blackwatch were known about, that the Japanese government were unhappy with the mission that Blackwatch did in Japan, and that they were effectively suspended and not meant to be working at this point. So perhaps this article was released around that time, or maybe slightly afterwards. I do like the nod on the top right corner of last print issue. Clearly, in an Overwatch near future, there are the same challenges for print magazines as there are in ours. Next up, we have the King's Road Times with London unrest rising. So whether this is just before Uprising or at the point of Uprising, there's another magazine that we see in a second that could possibly be around the same time. But that's definitely around the time of Uprising. Next, we have Tomorrow's Technology Explained. I do find it interesting that in the top right there's nanotechnology, safety, health and transportation. Why are so many industries getting on board? So this is talking about nanotechnology. We obviously know that Mercy worked on nanotechnology as part of her work, and that could probably be the health part of that. But safety, transportation, what are the nanotechnology uses in transportation? Some interesting questions as to Overwatch technology there. The thing that dominates the cover, of course, is the new Omnic future. Better, stronger, faster, smarter. Very much a Daft Punk reference there, but then what's next for humanity? obviously the rise of robots and AI challenging humanity's position and reshaping the economy and the world in which humans live as well. These are challenges that scientists, philosophers, and even robot ethicists are tackling in our world today. Next up, we've got the World Enquirer talking about an Antarctic base being lost in a polar storm, which is obviously referring to Ecopoint Antarctica. One of the big questions is, even if the base went under 3 years before the Swiss HQ blew up, then why did no one come and try and find the team? That's a big question that we haven't answered yet. Next up, we then have another Atlas News image showing that the Turing Green development has been approved and talking about Mayor Nanda and Takata Mondata being at a press conference. Now this we know is the development that happened just before the events of Uprising. Takata Mondata was in London to be breaking the ground on this new Omnic development. Last but not least, we see the big Atlas News picture of Overwatch being disbanded. This was shown in Recall. Winston had it on the screen when Athena reminded him of Overwatch being disbanded and the Petrus Act saying that Overwatch activity was illegal. So a lot of detail in those images, some creating new questions, others giving us just a bit more general background and flavour, but nice to see what's been happening in the Overwatch world in the last 9 years in a lot of different places from a lot of different perspectives. It was also cool to see a bit more of Snowball. Kind of a cheeky personality. At the beginning we heard that he stole somebody's socks. We see him communicate with some pictograms. He does a high five for May for a high five, and however complicated his programming or not, he shows empathy with May when she's sad when her entire team has passed away, as well as deciding and being able to make the decision to sacrifice his own battery life in order to make sure that May has the power she needs to finish her endothermic blaster. Never have I got so sad at a small droid running out of battery, apart from in Wall-E, of course. And, of course, I was very happy to see that May put together a nice solar charger for him by the end. A big thing that also stuck out for me from the short was May's engineering ability. She's like a member of the A-team. As well as being a peerless climatologist, she's clearly quite an accomplished engineer. She puts together this kind of jury-rigged aerial to make sure she can get signal when she gets up to the top of the tower, as well as putting together her endothermic blaster with her hairdryer, a whipped cream can, and we can actually see on the workbench in Ecopoint Antarctica all the ramen pots where she's been working. Her gun is actually pretty powerful. She makes her first ice wall when she has to try and save herself and the tower from crashing into the side of the canyon. Speaking of the tower, it's actually cool that if you go to Ecopoint Antarctica in-game, you can see the exploded out section on the tower that explodes when May's climbing up it in the short. I love this attention to detail. Finally, as May walks off into the cold unknown with Snowball at her side, do remember, of course, that we do know a bit about where she heads next. Now, if you followed this channel for a long time, or you're a keen Overwatch lore enthusiast, you may remember a blog before May's announcement along with Genji at BlizzCon 2015. Winston encourages her to write a journal, and she's been in the Yukon near Mount Logan for a while testing her gear, accidentally freezing her arm. We then see her on the news in Reflections trying to talk about weather patterns, so she's still doing well in kicking and trying to highlight the climate challenges of the planet while travelling around the world, hoping to re-establish the Ecopoint network and track down the causes of the threats to the planet's ecosystem as well as these strange weather patterns. Now at this point it's worth mentioning, of course, that there was a leak someone made way back in January of this year that talked about a few things, including the Lunar New Year event and also a May short. Now I disbelieved it at the time, so I'll have to say I was wrong on that one, but there were plenty of grounds to deem it false at the time. I'd be very surprised if the person who wrote that leak is still in a position at Blizzard or to get such information, so don't trust every leak you see still or everything that looks like a leak or calls itself a leak. This is actually only the second verified one there's ever been, apart from the Sombra image of a wiki before her launch. Do you remember that one before Junkenstein's Revenge? That was a year ago. How time flies. What did you think of the short? I loved it personally. It was a bit of a surprise to me that this particular story was chosen to be told, as we know the core of what happened from the Ecopoint Antarctica level, but it was beautifully told and a real character piece of development for May. Do let me know what you think in the comments. Thanks so much for tuning in to my animated short analysis. If you enjoy this, do throw a like or subscribe, it really helps me out. And do comment with what you think's been going on this short and your questions, theories, headcanon and favourite parts, all in the comments below. If you enjoy Overwatch lore and story, check out my analysis of other shorts, the Overwatch comics, as well as my hero lore interactions and voice lines, all in these playlists here. As always, big thanks to my patrons on Patreon who help make these videos happen. If you'd like to see how you can support from just $1, cent or pound a month, then please do check out the link in the description below, or patreon.com/Hammeh. You can get some cool rewards too. Cheers for tuning in. I've been Hammeh. Take it easy.